Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so hope you are fine and you've been able to work out the questions that were given yesterday. So yesterday we saw one concept, which is that of a software process. And we saw that we also talk about methodologies. Okay, so software development methodologies. So we've been seeing a number of methodologies, if you recall, yesterday's lecture: waterfall, spiral, V&V, agile, Scrum, extreme programming, prototyping. Okay, so a number of methodologies we've seen yesterday. So now we will try to apply this in some context here. I think we have a question here. I missed previous lecture class. Could you please send me lecture previous notes? Okay, so all lecture notes already available on Google Classroom. Okay, so you may liaise with your class rep, or you can send me an email. Okay, you can send me an email and I will send you the link. But all lecture materials, all tutorials already available on the platform. Okay. Any other question you have? Okay. Any other question? So if you don't have any question, then we're going to start with the correction of the tutorials. And I will be asking randomly some of you to answer the questions given. I need to share my screen and restart. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so question number one, choose a software process model for each of the following give reasons for your choice. If I have to develop a video compression component for mobile device, okay, so if we try to understand the context, and of course, these questions should take some time to work out these questions. So if I have to develop a video compression component for mobile devices, which methodology are you going to use? Let's hear from you. Abhishek? What approach, what software development process do you think you will adopt to develop a, like we're seeing here, video compression? Okay, video compression component for mobile devices. So what methodology do you think you will use? Mohammed?
So I don't know if it's good I use reuse model, because I think for a software like this, it's a loop. Like every time we need to compress next video, then we'll use the same code every time to compress a video. And we have a code on internet that already have this code for compressing.
Okay, so I understand. So yesterday we saw one concept, which is that of component reuse. Okay, so our friend here is mentioning that we might be using component reuse because some of the components already available on the internet, some codes already available on the internet. So you're just going to, yes, this is correct. I agree with you. And you've been justifying, for example, why we should be using component reuse, because some codes, some components already available on the internet, and you just have to kind of reuse these. Okay, yes, I agree with you. Any other answer you might think of? And of course, for these questions, there is not like one answer which is correct. You might be having a number of correct answers and a number of correct options. What's important is that you justify, for example, why you're choosing this particular software process and not another one. But what you mentioned is correct. Okay, so component reuse. Any other answer for this part A?
We can use waterfall model.
You can use waterfall model.
Because we already know what we want from this application we're developing. It has to compress the video, so developing the video at the application at once and then show it to the customer won't affect the production that much compared to if I am developing a game or a complex.
Okay, agreed with. Yes, please continue.
Sure.
No, it's all.
Okay. Yes, I'm the one wanted to give an answer.
In addition to what he previously said, a waterfall model is also suitable for small or medium projects. It is also when the requirements are well understood, or changes will be fairly limited during the design process.
Okay. Okay, so what's important here is that you give the justification to show that, for example, you understand what are the specificities of each of these software process models that we saw. Okay, so this is, yes?
Can we use incremental models so that we can, when the user is using software, they can send their feedback and additional features that add so that upgrade the previous versions?
Incremental model, I would say you're going to use incremental model when you are a bit like kind of short of time and you want the product to be quick on the market. Okay, so if you give the justification that, for example, you would want the software to be quick on the market, so that's why you're going for the incremental model, whereby in the first increment, you consider the software with the most important features, and then you deliver this to the market, and you get feedback. You build other features. Yes, that would be okay. But you have to justify, for example, why you're going. For the first one, component-based reuse, that's fine. Waterfall model, you mentioned waterfall model because perhaps the requirements are clear and we would want to go for this since we have stable requirements. Yesterday we saw one concept which is that have stable requirements, well defined from the client side what we would expect. If you're talking about like incremental, the only reason, according to me, why we should be having incremental is because you would want the product to be rapid on the market. And even though it consists of the first increment that's going to have the most important features, then it's okay. Okay, that's the only reason. Because, you know, incremental, this one, video compression component for mobile devices, it's not a very simple project. If you try to understand this, it's not a very simple project. It's quite complex. We have to understand the context, we have to understand the situation. And for example, let's try to think about it together and we try to understand the logic. It's quite complex, quite big. It's going to be used by everyone here in the world because we're talking about video compression component for mobile devices. I'm not talking about a particular manufacturer or a particular set of users. So available to everyone in the world. So target audience is worldwide. Incremental, you go this for this incremental approach for a project that is not that very serious, okay, not that very critical, not that very important, where you would kind of show the most important features first, and then you come with later on with the other features, other functionalities. You may choose incremental, though I would prefer perhaps the component-based reuse and waterfall model, but you may use this incremental model with the justification that you want this application to be rapid on the market, first as a first increment with the main features and the most important features, and the other increments would contain the other expected features at a later stage. Is that okay for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other question or any other software process? This this tutorial exercise is more like to make you think and to reflect on the different software processes that we saw yesterday, and eventually to kind of choose the best one that you think would be appropriate. Okay, it's just to make you think. Like I mentioned, there is no like one correct answer. It's just like, for example, if I say, do you think you can use Agile for this one?
Yes.
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 Okay, I doubt Agile is going to be good for this one. Okay.
It might as waste resources, because making several people working on a simple project like wasting resources like money, like you have to pay 5 people to do just one simple project. Won't it be a loss for the company?
Yes. No, and I'm saying, I doubt Agile is going to be good for this project. Okay. Why Agile perhaps is not going to be good? Because the requirements are stable here. We've seen that Agile requirements, Agile methodology is good, whereby you want to show this to the client. You want to really kind of have requirements that's going to change. But this one requirements is clear. And Agile, for example, you have much of customer involvement, which I don't think is really that very much important here. Okay, so again, here, what's important is that you understand how these would work, and you choose perhaps the best one with the proper justification.
So
Yes.
I have answer for the Agile methodology.
For part
Uh,
A.
Yes, for part A. There can be regular adaptation to changing circumstances. For example, newer versions of Android may require changes to the video compression component in order to work perfectly.
You know, if we talk about Agile, we have to understand the process as well. Agile is more for where you have interfaces, systems, and clients coming to see how the user is going to interact. Here we are talking about a low-level system, part A. If we try to understand this concept, a video compression component, video compression component, we don't really have interfaces. The user not really involved here. It's just a video compression component. So this is, you know, even when they're developing systems, we have what we call as a high-level software and a low-level software. If I'm talking about, you know, you have to write a driver for a printer, or if you have to write an operating system, or if you have like this for part A to write a video compression component for mobile devices. So these are low-level systems, low-level software that's going to interact with the hardware. So it's not like an interface in like VB.NET or interface web where the client needs to have some kind of look and feel of the system. So here we're talking about low-level systems. Me personally, I wouldn't advise for Agile here. Agile is, for example, when the requirements are not clear, when you have to get the users involved, where you get like sprint and so on. So not really. This one, I see more as a low-level system where you get the video compression component to interact with the hardware of the mobile device. No interfaces required for this. You don't have interfaces. It's just a low-level component, just like when you're writing a driver for a printer, or you're writing a driver for a barcode scanner. Okay, so here, what the client is concerned about is only that it performs what's expected from the barcode scanner reading the barcodes. So similarly here, the client, I don't think has much feedback to give here. Not much feedback according to me. You just have to perform the operation it's supposed to do, like video compression, and that's all. Okay, so that's why, ask me, I wouldn't really be keen to go for Agile here. Okay, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Part B, developing an inventory system to an exact specification. So here, I think the keyword here is exact specification. So which one are you going to use?
Waterfall model.
Waterfall model. Perhaps the most appropriate one would be this waterfall model. We have stable requirements, exact specification, developing an all-encompassing student management system.
Sir, for part A,
Yes.
can we use extreme programming practices?
Extreme programming.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't advise this. Okay. This one, like I mentioned, I think what we need to really understand here, even when you're developing like software, we have two different categories of software. For example, if tomorrow I ask you, okay, write an operating system for me. It's not like writing an interface where you are like performing transactions online. So we have what we call as low-level software. So writing of the driver would be equivalent to a low-level software. Video compression component, even this is a low-level software. Okay, so I would think we would go more for some rigid process, especially concerning the fact that here it's a software that's being written whereby the target is for everyone in the world. It's a video compression component, and that's going to be used on all mobile devices. So we need to ensure that the softwares are of adequate quality. Okay, of adequate quality. When we talk about Scrum, when we talk about Agile, when we talk about extreme programming, I'm not saying that the quality is going to be compromised, but I would say that the focus of using these methodologies is rapid delivery of software. Okay, so there is no mention that the software has to be delivered rapidly here. So I'm not really keen about using the extreme programming for quality. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
For part B, can we use V&V software model?
I've not understood your question. For part A?
For part B, can we use V&V software model?
For part B, can we use V&V software model? Yes, you can use it. And your justification would be what?
My justification would be because of its software validation. The software will fulfill its intended use, and because of its verification, the product will be built according to the requirement and design specification.
Yes, it's going to be according to the design specification and requirements. Yes, you can use V&V here. Okay, so you can use V&V, but you have to justify it. What you mentioned is correct. Yes, you can use V&V for part C, developing an all-encompassing student management system. Mohammed, you have a question?
I use increment because no, for part C, I'm saying
Okay, yes.
I use increment because a managing system is large and this project must be done stepwise. Let's say, for example, step 1, I need to check if I can properly input my student name. Then step 2, if I can input their age, because this system will continue growing. Because let's say in 5 years, I need to make students pay online because this system we will keep adding additional system programming it.
Okay. Yes, what you mentioned here, so you're going to use increment.
Because it's a stepwise process.
You are talking about incremental. Yes? Mohammed, yes, you talk about incremental, which is correct, because here we would focus, since it's an all-encompassing student management system, so you can have some aspects of finance, you can have some aspects of module registration, you can have some aspects of enrolling at the university. So you would choose the first increment by implementing the most important functionalities, and then coming up with a second increment, the third increment, going on with adding additional functionalities. We have 2 participants raising hand. Yeah, you may talk.
AV model is best suited because it is simple and easy to use. Also, failure and downtime of the management system is unacceptable because important data is stored in the student management system.
Yes. Okay. Agreeable. But here again, I would say that the the focus, when you read this, you have to identify the keywords. The keywords, for example, for part B was exact specification. Okay, so that was the keyword. The keyword for part A was video compression component, where we talk about a low-level software. So keyword for part A, low-level compression component, I would characterize this as a low-level software. Keyword for part B was exact specification. So I'm going to map this to perhaps waterfall model. The keyword for part C, according to me, is an all-encompassing. All-encompassing here. So what comes to my mind is that it's going to be a very big system. It's going to be a very big system, and you cannot really deploy a very big system having all functionalities at one go. Okay, you cannot like deliver the big system having all functionalities at one go, because it might take 2 years, 3 years. What's preferable here is that you deploy even part of the software with the main functionalities, with the most important functionalities, so that the user can start to use the system. And then you, with your team, you continue working on this and you release further increments. Me personally, I would prefer this incremental model. Okay, this incremental model, because we would focus on delivering certain increments having the most important functionalities. But I'm not saying VNV is not correct. VNV might be correct if you give the proper justification, whereby you mentioned that the focus would be on having a software of high quality, okay, which is good, because student management system, at times you have to deal with bulks of students, which is quite sensitive. So you talk about VNV with the justification that perhaps you would want to have a software which is of high quality. Agreeable. But me, what came to my mind is this all-encompassing student management system, whereby I get the impression that it's going to be something very big. So that's why I need to kind of release this in the form of increments. Okay, for question number 1.
So
Okay,
and what?
Yes.
So, and what about a prototype model? User requirements will be easily understood in the forms of model.
You mean for part C?
Part C, yes.
Part C, prototype model. And then what are you going to do with the prototype? Are you going to, we've seen yesterday, we have 2 types of prototypes. We have this throwaway prototype and some kind of incremental prototype. What would you suggest?
Yes, now the incremental prototype.
Yes, you can use this as well. So some kind of incremental prototype.
Yes.
You give the proper justification.
So if I can't write simply prototype model, I should write an incremental prototype model each type.
Exactly, because I think this throwaway prototype here is not really adapted here.
Yes,
because you throwaway prototype, you use it just to verify the feasibility of this project. But this one all-encompassing student management system, there is nothing new, nothing novel with this. This is something feasible. What is required is only time. You need funding and you need person. You consider this throwaway prototype just to demonstrate that the project is feasible. So you can use prototype, but you have to specify that you're going to incrementally build on this. Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments for question number 1?
Sir, can we use Pure model for that? For this
Part C?
Yes.
Part C? For part C, just to confirm.
Yes, because we will be storing student data, like their personal data that are very sensitive, as you said. In Spiral, I think they do risk analysis and different, just release a prototype and do a testing with it. And if there is lots of things that they need to correct, they redo another prototype after some modifications, and like they release it after it is really secure. Like, can we really use Pure model for that?
correctly point out that the central point using this spiral model is the risk component. Okay, but risk, we use the way I view risk, and it should be viewed, is not about the sensitivity of the data that it holds. Okay, it's about more like, some kind of unsure business environment, unsure business condition, staff may leave. So this is what's really the notion of risk. When we talk about risk, we're going to see this eventually in the future lectures. When we talk about risk, we talk about perhaps time frame not being abided by. We talk about perhaps cost overrun, I'm exceeding the funding, staff turnover, staff are leaving. So this is what a risk really means. It's not about the sensitivity of the data here, because a bank, I'm sure you would understand, perhaps a bank is more critical in terms of safety of the data that it holds. But I'm not really keen for this spiral model here, because I think the focus, me personally, the focus is we have to understand that the system is a big system. And even the university of Mauritius has such a system, because it has a system that's going to hold your marks, to allow you to enroll online, to manage your financial aspects. Okay, so even the University of Mauritius has such a system. Spiral, I don't really think, because the focus is on not taking like 5 years, like one of your friends mentioned, to come up with such a system. It has to be done in terms of releases, in terms of increments. I'm not really sure, not really convinced for Spiral. Spiral, you're going to use it where there is a high element of risk. And we will see risk later on, like time, tight deadlines, staff overrun, schedule overrun, cost overrun. Okay, so we're going to see this, but not really convinced for a Spiral. But again, I appreciate your effort in trying to find perhaps an appropriate software process model for this. But we try to just kind of match information that we have for each of the software process models that we saw yesterday. Me personally, I think the best one is going to be having this kind of incremental model for Part C. Is it okay for everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But again, it might be that you have a student management system where it's really complex, and if you state the expected, what's expected for Spiral, like high element of risk, staff overrun, cost, staff turnover. Staff turnover means staff they're leaving the work. So development team, you find perhaps programmers, important programmers leaving, the key programmer for such a project leaving, or if you find, for example, the tight deadline, if you find, for example, budget not available, high element of risk, then of course you may suggest a Spiral for Part C. If you don't have any question, then we move to Part 2. Give some 1 minute to read Part 2. XYZ Company Limited is a t-shirt manufacturing factory with 100 staff. XYZ Company has solicited your services for the development of a suitable management information system that will satisfy the requirements of the business process. Following preliminary requirements analysis, it seems that XYZ Company Limited has not been able to establish decisive requirements. However, the MIS will have to cater for major business processes such as manufacturing, HR, warehousing. The project is meant to be completed in 1 year. where it's expected to be going for parallel changeover. So this parallel changeover, we're going to see this in much more detail later on. You know, when you're developing a system and you have an old system existing, there are a number of ways to do the deployment. At times you stop the old system and you move directly to the new system. Or at times what you do is you allow the old system to run, and side by side, you launch the new system as well. So this is parallel changeover. Okay, so you have both systems running and deployed just to ensure perhaps here the new system is working correctly and it's not causing any kind of disruption. You want the business logic to be separated from the database. Discuss whether the waterfall or an incremental model would be more appropriate. I give you 2 minutes. Have a look at this question we're going to discuss in 2 minutes. Try to think about which one would be more appropriate. Which one do you think would be appropriate for this one? Is it waterfall or incremental?
Incremental.
Okay, and your justification?
This is because XYZ company limited does not have the full and specific requirements yet.
Okay.
Since there are several business processes that the MIS is made up of, the processes can be delivered in parts which will give the companies the opportunity to delay their decisions regarding the requirements until they have some experience with the early increments that acts as a prototype.
Yes, very good. Okay, so me too. I think it's good that we go for this incremental method or model. Okay, so incremental, agreed. Question number 3. I give you again 2 minutes to read question number 3. 2-3 minutes to read question number 3, and then we're going to correct.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes,
for
please
example,
go ahead.
How many marks can the question number 2 be?
Okay, so this is going to depend, of course, on the number of marks. For example, if you ask like discuss over, for such a question over 5 marks, so as per the marking scheme, perhaps this is going to, what we expect and what we would require is like 5 criteria, 5 reasons, 5 points. Okay, so, but here, nothing specified in terms of marks. How you answer a question normally would depend on the number of marks. For example, if you ask, do you think a waterfall model is correct or incremental? And the question is on 10 marks. But if you write only like incremental is more correct, so you're going to get 1 mark. So you have to understand that the way you answer the question is going to depend and to vary, but it's going to depend on the number of marks that's given here. Normally for such a question, you can have like 5 marks, okay, for 4 marks, and 1 mark for choosing incremental, and perhaps 3 marks or 4 marks for the justification why incremental is better. Is that okay?
Yes. Sir, and how do we write our answers? Can we write it on bullet points, or do we have to be to give long answers?
It depends. Here you are asked, and this, there is a difference between list, explain, discuss, compare, and contrast. If you are asked like list 5 advantages or list 5 reasons why you're going to choose incremental model, then you write it in bullet. But if you're asked discuss 5 reasons why you're going to use incremental, then you have to write in not really list. Okay, but you may use bullet to show the different points, but you really have to discuss here. The word is discuss. The word is not state or it's not list. When you say state and list, just put a bullet and you put a 1 line. But if you ask discuss, okay, you really have to kind of discuss.
I see.
Okay, so this is going to depend on the keyword that's used to start the question, in fact. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so 3 minutes for question number 3, and then we correct.
Sir? Sir?
Please, question number 3, can we correct?
Sir,
Yes.
question number 3, line 2 to 3. It has said that by delivering a working prototype 2 to 4 weeks, how can we know that is it the early stage or advanced?
So let us read this together, and yes, I will answer to your question. So software company IDSoft has recently signed a contract with ABC Airline Industry for automating the reservation of the company. By delivering a working prototype 2 to 4 weeks after the project start. So this is an early version of the prototype. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this is an early version of the prototype because 2 to 4 weeks is especially for an airline reservation system. So this is at the very beginning, according to me, of the project. Okay, so early version of the prototype. Any other question?
When can it be said like not an early stage?
For such a project, I think it's a big project because we're talking about airline industry automating reservation and system. So perhaps after 6 months, I would say that this is not an early version of the prototype. 2 to 4 weeks, you have to really understand the requirements. First of all, you need to understand the requirements. This is going to take you at least 1 week or 2 weeks. So working prototype 2 to 4 weeks after the project start. This is a very, very early prototype.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that mean we cannot use the V model?
Okay, I will. Let me complete this and then we'll discuss on whether we can use the V model. Let me complete the reading first, and then I will answer the question. Is that okay for you? Is that okay for you? We read this and then we answer whether V model would be correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So by delivering a working prototype 2 to 4 weeks after the project starts, business users are able to experience the solution very soon. As a result, they will be able to validate the main functionality and provide valuable feedback on whether what has been implemented and what is still missing. In every iteration, new features will be delivered. Yesterday, we saw what is an iteration. User feedback will be included and new demo will be performed. When the final version is deployed in production, users will have seen several intermediate demos and were involved in the whole process. The solution they get is the solution they ask for. So this is as per the concept of customer involvement. From that point on, new versions of the solution will be released to include new functionality or correct existing features with every new version. The value of the solution will continue to grow, ensuring it remains evergreen. Identify the software process model adopted, providing your justification.
Incremental prototyping model.
Incremental prototyping model. Okay, so here, nothing mentioned about VNV here. When we talk about VNV, to answer to the question of our friend asked earlier, the focus should be on risk. Okay, so VNV, risk, nothing mentioned about risk here. Okay, so we cannot say that the software process model is VNV. No, not VN, not I'm making confusion. And Spiral is risk. Our friend asked about VNV or Spiral.
V model.
VNV.
Okay, our friend talked about V model, but the V model here is the left part is on implementation and the right part is on testing. So it does implementation first, completes all implementation, and then goes for testing on the right side. But here what we find is that we are having like features or functionalities or increments being delivered. Okay, because if we have a look at this, intermediate demos, okay, VNV doesn't talk about intermediate demos. Okay, so VNV is not good. What would you suggest, all of you? It's the
Incremental prototyping.
Prototype.
Incremental prototyping, even spiral, it's not spiral, it's not BNB. In case you are not sure, you can proceed by elimination. It's not spiral, no mention of risk. It's not BNB, because there are a number of intermediate demos. BNB doesn't have intermediate demos. It's not agile, because we don't see concepts of sprint, stories, Scrum, okay? It's not a waterfall, definitely, because there is a number of intermediate demos. Waterfall does not involve customers. So proceeding by elimination, it's incremental prototyping. Yes, question 3. All agreeable for question number 3?
Yes.
But Agile have a
Yes.
time box of 1 to 4 weeks, like said in the question number 3, like it has given a first prototype like in 2 to 4 weeks. Like
Okay.
isn't it a way to say it can be agile too?
A very good observation by our friend here about the time frame 2 to 4 weeks. This shows that the first prototype is on very quickly. Okay, the first prototype is on very quickly. I agree with what you said. If you refer to the lecture notes, there is a diagram in the lecture notes where you find that there is an arrow, and the arrow is mentioned 2 to 4 weeks. I understand your point, it's a very valid point. The time frame that's mentioned here, 2 to 4 weeks, is agile. It is agile. You can mention agile here as the software process model, but the only negative point is that I don't find the keywords used for agile, because normally for agile, you should be having like keywords like stories, you should be having like sprint, you should be having like regular meetings. So there are certain keywords that define or depict agile, like stories, sprint, meetings, a scrum master. Okay, so like this, but I don't find these keywords. But a very good observation by your point. I would say that the prototype 2 to 4 weeks after the project start. This slide, I think it's very much in line with what agile would suggest. So for this question, I think we can use agile, because we also find that we have iteration. Okay, we have iteration.
What we say in the first paragraph, there is also. Can you go up a little bit?
I'm not heard what you mentioned.
Can you go upward a little bit in the first few? Yes. As a result, they will be able to validate the main functionality and provide valuable feedback. Isn't it like a meeting where the customers will say, like, I use a prototype and give feedback, what is missing, what is. So it is
Yes,
in
I agree
Agile.
with you. Yes, so even agile for this one is acceptable. Okay, so incremental prototyping, I would accept. Agile methodology also accepted, but you have to provide the justification. So you mentioned that agile, perhaps due to the fact that working prototype is 2 to 4 weeks after the project start, which is very, very rapid. And agile focuses on this, okay? Because agile, you don't have to get all the requirements ready before you can start with the development. So you can mention agile because the delivery of the first prototype is quick, okay, 2 to 4 weeks. You have this concept of feedback, which is characteristic of agile. You have the concept of iteration. Yes, I've seen the word here, iteration, which is characteristic of agile. But the only negative part here, why agile perhaps is not really the software process model that we're talking about, is because we lack the keywords. You know, for example, in agile, if we use the word story, this is characteristic of agile. I cannot replace the word story by another word, because this is the technical term used in agile. But if we had like stories here, okay, then for sure it would be agile. But of course, iteration, rapid delivery, 2 to 4 weeks, Agile, I would accept Agile also for question number 3. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 4, your team develops a new software for a customer who has a vague understanding of the system requirements and the system requirements and is unstable to assess how the new system affects work process. Which software development would you use and recommend? Why? So
Spiral model.
Spiral model. Here, the keyword I think is a vague understanding of the system requirements.
So I use
And
incremental model.
this is unable and is unable to assess the new system work practice. You mentioned what did you mention?
Incremental model.
Incremental model, and why?
The user has a vague understanding of the requirement. Those vague requirements are prioritized, and this becomes the core product. This gives the customer opportunity to have more experience and to better understand the system. While doing so, the user can evaluate further and the next increments can be added.
Okay, acceptable. Okay, accepted. This is accepted. Spiral, our friend before you talk about spiral. Not really sure because I don't find the keywords are specific to spiral here, like risk and so on. What other answer do you think we can use here?
Agile.
Agile.
Yes, you can use agile. Okay, big requirement. What other you can use?
Prototyping.
Prototyping, agree. You can use prototyping. So you can use prototyping, you can use agile, you can use, first one you mentioned was incremental. Incremental, exactly. So incremental, prototyping, or agile, accepted. Any question you have for this tutorial?
Sir?
Yes.
For question number 3, can't we use extreme programming?
Extreme programming for question number 3.
Because
You know, extreme programming. Yes, please carry on.
Can you scroll down a bit? Because it says on the last paragraph, correct existing features in extreme programming, there's a refactoring.
Okay, so I understand your point. So refactoring would mean the correction of existing features. Yes, you can talk about extreme programming. You can talk about extreme programming because again here you provide the justification that we are talking about correcting existing features using refactoring. But extreme programming has a certain context. Okay, we have to understand the context. So these questions, it's good that we use them for some kind of discussion. Extreme programming, certain keywords are not seen here. For example, pair programming, or okay, I don't find these keywords here. Pair programming or working in pair. So perhaps here this is on the negative point. But anyway, you know, all releases, all new releases, all increments, we have to correct existing features. So even incremental or even incremental prototyping is going to correct existing features. So perhaps even the incremental prototyping is going to do this, correcting existing features to improve the system. Extreme programming, the only issue is I don't find certain technical words associated with extreme programming. So if we talk about extreme programming, if you refer to the lecture notes, you will find that we have concepts of pair programming and so on, which is not really present here. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, but it's good. I appreciate the effort that you've made here, and it's good that we discuss on it. some people might want to go for extreme programming, but my only concern is that we don't find the technical words for extreme programming here. Any other question you have?
There are questions in the chat.
A question in the chat. Let me check this. You have a question here. Are there questions where initially a process model but later changes to another process model? Not really recommended, because that's why at the very beginning you have to choose a process model and you don't normally change to another process model. Okay, you cannot do this. So that's why at the start of the project, you identify your methodology, which is going to be your process model, and you stick to this. Is that okay, Anish? Okay,
Yes.
you don't really. Okay. Our next question we have for 1A is more suitable for while software as this model allows constant between customer developers and testers. Likewise, it allows the project to adapt to changes rapidly. It also enables the release to be sent to the client for testing and made for feedback. Scrum for 1A. Okay, Scrum for 1A. I have here Scrum for 1A. You know what? Even mobile devices, we talk about different mobile devices, mobile applications. For example, if I talk about an application like Juice, MCB Juice, this is a mobile application, but not at low level. Okay, not at low level. If I'm considering a mobile application like Juice, then perhaps Scrum is good because it allows constant interaction between customers, developers, and testers, adapted to changes. We can have feedbacks. But this one, feedback is not really important for this 1A. Okay, feedback is not really important because it's a low-level software. It just needs to perform compression. This is not even going to be visible at an interface level, but it's just going to be some kind of low-level software operating on the mobile device. Okay, not really keen for Scrum for 1A. Prototyping. I'm not sure for this which part this prototyping model or question is. Prototyping is non-stable requirements where sometimes changes need to be done. Yes, very good. We've seen this, and that's why we've seen that for perhaps this one, vague understanding, perhaps you might use prototyping, incremental prototyping. Do we need to know all the models for the exam? Yes, we need to know all the models. Lecture notes are available from Google Classroom, okay? We're not going to send you individually the notes, but just accept the Google Classroom lectures. Any other question?
Sir, can we put XP as answer for question 4?
XP for question number 4. Yes, you can use XP for question number 4 because these are not stable requirements. Yes, you can put XP for question number 4. But again, here you give your proper justification. So, you know, these questions is just to make you think about the different programming or the different process models. You can have a number of answers possible. Okay, you can have a number of answers possible. Okay, so it's just to make you think. Any other question you have?
Sir, I have a question for the lecture.
Okay.
Can you give an example of spiral method?
Can we give an example of spiral method?
For risk.
Okay, so spiral method is a methodology that we are going to apply in software projects whereby you have an element of risk. Risk, what I mean by risk is the likelihood of something going wrong, or even some literature will find wrong or right in a project. For example, let's say you're working on a project, but you find that your team leader has a high probability of leaving the project. So there's a high element of risk. you're working on a project where you have a compressed schedule and there is a high probability that we'll not finish within the deadline. Okay, so element of risk. You're working on a project with a tight budget, and we might have some kind of budget over exceeding the budget. Okay, so element of risk. So this spiral model is going to be used in projects where we have like kind of high elements of risk. Another element of risk can be, for example, I'm working on a project, for example, in mobile application like Juice, but my competitor is also working on this and is planning to release the software before I release mine. And it will happen that if I release my software after my competitor is going to become obsolete on the market. An element of risk. Okay, so for such kind of projects, then spiral model is good because we would focus on kind of really tackling these risk aspect, and this would be appropriate. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So if you don't have any question, then we're going to stop here. I'm going to meet you for the lectures, but still, if you got any questions, you can always email me. I will answer back. Okay.
Yes, the question in the chat.
The question in the chat. What are the technical words for each model? I think we need to get this from the lecture notes itself. For example, if we talk about stable requirements, then we talk about very often it's waterfall. If we talk about perhaps agile, we are talking about stories, we're talking about meetings. If we talk about prototyping, we are talking about customer feedback, customer involvement, look and feel of the software. So like this, for each of these different process models, you have certain keywords. I would suggest that you have a look at them. In case you have any questions, we can further discuss afterwards. Okay. Is it okay, Durvesh? Okay. Any other question? So if you don't have any question, then we're going to stop here for today. I'm going to meet you next Monday, 2 o'clock for the lectures. And the lecture materials already available in the Google Classroom. I would recommend that you read the lecture materials before coming to the lecture. Okay. Okay, so we stop here for today. Have a great evening. Okay, bye. In case you have any other questions, you can always email me in case you have any questions. I will answer back on email. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, bye.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.